All right. Hello, everybody. Everybody that's in our boardroom and also those who are joining on Zoom. We'll now call the meeting of the Personnel Commission of the Berkeley Unified School District for November 22nd, 2024. Order, it's a little after 1. Ms. Arnez, would you call the roll and establish the quorum, please?
Sure. Chairperson Roeder?
Here.
Commissioner Alpert?
Present.
Commissioner Goldstein?
Present.
Okay, all the commissioners are present and we have a quorum. Next order of business will be the public comment period. We allot 15 minutes to public comments, so if there's anyone, we'll start with those in the boardroom. If there's anyone in the boardroom who would like to make a public comment, please come forward to the podium and go ahead and identify yourself. Don't see anyone coming up quite yet. So we'll go to those participants who are remote. If you would raise your remote hand, please, and we'll call on you. So I am not seeing anyone with their remote hand up. Sarah, are you seeing anyone? No. Okay, then we will close, and no one's coming forward. We will close the public comment period and move to item 4, which is approval and adoption of the agenda. Do the commissioners have any changes to suggest? Yes, Mr. Albert.
If we're going to move something off of consent, would that be now or on the consent calendar?
You should do that now.
I was going to ask to move item 7A off of consent.
7A, okay. Any other items to be modified? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as modified?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, and it passes. Now we have the approval of the meeting minutes, and before we get into those, I neglected to welcome our newest commissioner, Sally Alpert, appointed by BCCE, and welcome to the commission, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. I will just say I'm excited, and I look forward to a lot to learn. So please bear with me.
Great, thank you. Now we're on to the approval of the meeting minutes. First, item 5A, which is the October 23rd, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Any changes or suggestions to those? Yes, Commissioner Goldstein.
So I would suggest for the October 23rd minutes that at the very beginning where we talk about solely taking the oath, that we use his full legal name so people know who he is, and then we can refer to him as solely thereafter. But, you know, just that we establish that. I'd also ask that where we talk about, in the report from closed session, we talk about Philip Gordillo, that we actually add his title as the president of the California School Personnel Commissioner Association. And I'm not sure if it makes a difference, but, you know, at the time, we thought our regular meeting was going to be at 4:30. Maybe, you know, we just kind of make a note, you know, subsequently, you know, move to 1 p.m. for their regular meeting.
Okay, so your suggestions, as I've noted, Commissioner Goldstein, are leaving aside Sally's name for just a second until the end, is item 12, adding Philip Gordillo, who's the executive director of the California School Personnel Commissioners Association, and that's at least with me.
Right.
That's fine. I'm not so sure about, at the time, these are the minutes reflecting what happened at the meeting, which was that at that time, this meeting was going to be between 4:30 and 7:30.
And that's true. I'm not wedded to the other idea. I just thought maybe a bracket, subsequently revised to
Yeah, I don't have
1
a
PM.
strong feeling one way or another on that.
Do you care?
I wasn't at the beginning.
Yeah.
Or I wasn't at the beginning.
Why don't we just leave it?
Okay.
Because
I'm fine.
that does accurately reflect what had occurred at that time. Okay.
It's fine.
And then I'm going to, for my vote, I'm going to leave it up to Mr. Alpert as far as how he would like to have his name stated.
And I do appreciate your diligence. Solly is quite fine. It's what I put on the ballot, so I'm pretty sure it's.
Okay,
official
if
enough.
it's, okay. Okay,
appreciate it.
good enough. Okay.
All right, so we will leave that intact. So we only have one change to item 12. And so is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 23rd, 2024, with the revision to paragraph or item 12?
So moved.
Sounds good.
Well, it's a draw. 2 motions, 2 seconds. And I concur. So that passes unanimously.
At the rent board, I'm usually the only one to jump to make motions. So now I'm glad that I have someone else who's eager. I don't have to do all the work.
And now we're on to our special meeting minutes for November 12th, 2024. Any suggestions to those minutes? See, the heads are shaking. Is there a motion?
Go for it.
So moved.
All right. I'll second.
Moved, seconded, and I agree, passes unanimously. All right. Now we're on to our reports. Is there someone present from the union who would like to make a report at this time?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about briefly because there are actually some agenda items that I want to make sure, hopefully, that when we get to those items, I have an opportunity to speak and I would like to speak on. So one of them, and the reason why I'm taking this moment is because when we get there, hopefully I will have the opportunity. I have some concerns when we get to on consent item number 7I, which is the student admission specialist. I noticed that it says 34 written and 22 performance. And I'm not understanding that because I've been talking with the exec board and some other people, and we're coming to find out, and I actually, honestly, I want to have the opportunity to speak with Aaron about the way the testing is being done when it comes to classifications, because it appears that there are different ways that the testing process is being done based off of classifications, and there's no consistency. So I really wanted to have the opportunity to talk to her about it prior. I didn't get a chance to email her due to the fact that I was dealing with a funeral. So I was, dealing with that the last couple of days. So I didn't have the opportunity, but before we approve that list, I want to either talk about it, talk about my concerns, because in reading some rules, I'm not understanding why there was 2 written tests given for the student admission specialist. But then on here, it says 1 test was written and 1 test was performance. And that's not clear. So there's quite a concerns. And so I need some discussion based off that, and I just think that it's only fair if we have the discussion amongst ourselves before we have that discussion here. So if that can be pulled, that would be great. If not, then I would like, if you don't want to pull it and you want to just have the discussion here in open forum, then we can do that as well. So that is totally up to you guys. But I would like to have these discussions because we are quite, the union is just quite confused on how, the tests are being conducted because we know the way it's supposed to go, but it's a lot of inconsistencies. And then also, when we get to the consent item of course, for library media specialists, I did read the recommendation, and there's some concerns there. So I would like to be able to speak regarding that as well. So I'm just gonna, I'm just taking my time to say that.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ms. Scher. So as far as speaking, when we get to, it's our practice that when we get to the item on the agenda, that you will have absolutely an opportunity to address, and anybody else who wants to address the item can do so as well. And I think I'm going to use Chairman's prerogative here and ask that we reopen item 4, approval and adoption of the agenda, for the purpose of pulling consent item 7I, student admission specialist, for discussion. Any
fine with
objection
that.
to that? Okay, that will pass. And Sarah, if the minutes could reflect that we've pulled that item for discussion as well, along with 7A. Okay. Now we're on to the district reports, item 6B. Let's see if there's anyone from the district who would like to make a report. I'm not seeing anyone raise their virtual hand. No. Oh, yes, Aaron.
Samantha Tobias Espinoza let me know that she would not be able to attend today. She had to attend a training related to layoffs.
Okay.
So she was not going to be able to make it. But I do have something to report out for her, but I'll include it as part of my report.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you very much. And now commissioner reports. So for Commissioner Alpert's benefit, this is a time when it's entirely voluntary whether the commissioners want to make any kind of report or not. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, depending on the length of our agenda sometimes. So I will ask you first, Commissioner Alpert, if you would like to make any kind of report at this time?
Sure. I figure I would use this opportunity to briefly introduce myself. For all the folks who don't know, my name is Solly Alpert. I'm the vice chair of the Rent Board currently, and recently BCCE appointed me to the union position on this body. I've been in Berkeley since 2015 when I came here for Cal as an undergrad, and have been involved in a lot of union and tenant politics and policy, and helping write policy and research policy. And so, yeah, I look forward to learning about all this process. I've become somewhat familiar with the personnel management at the Rent Board, where I'm on the Budget and Personnel Committee for the past couple of years. But I know that we have a much larger task here than at the Rent Board. The Rent Board has about 30 employees, which is not quite the same scale. And so, yeah, thank you all for educating me.
Thank you, Commissioner Alpert. Commissioner Goldstein.
Sure. So first off, welcome. Solely glad to have you and looking forward to serving with you. I want to just congratulate our one re-elected school board director, Anna Vesadev, and then Jen Korn, for winning her election. And let folks know that 12/4 will be Director Babbitt's last school board meeting. And if you're so inclined to come thank her for her service, that's a good date to do it. I will be starting as the chair with the December meeting for this body. And in that role, I will reopen having office hours. So my thought is that they will be the second Thursday of each month from 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. at Highwire, which is on San Pablo Coffee Shop. Or, of course, you can reach me through my BUSD email, which is Heidi Goldstein at, the same domain that everybody else here is at. And that second Thursday, I meant to bring my calendar, I think is the 11th. So December 11th is the first office hours. Do I have that right, Aaron? Are you looking at that? I should look on my phone. No, it should be a Thursday. The 12th. Okay, got it, the 12th. Right, I don't think we have it that early though, right? Okay, that's fine, I'll be well caffeinated for it. Okay. So, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Goldstein. I also wanted to congratulate Jen Korn as our newest director on the school board, and welcome back Anna Vasudev, and thank Laura Babbitt for her years of service on the board. Greatly appreciated. Next, I just wanted to say that I did attend, so again, for Commissioner Alpert's edification, there is an organization called the, I never get it right, California School Personnel Commissioners Association, and as was announced, Mr. Gordillo is the executive director of that. And there was a conference that I attended, and it was very, very educational. And some of the matters that I thought were really interesting was one had to do with implementation of AB 438, which has been in effect for a while. But it has to do with layoffs, and it has to do with the manner in which notice is provided to classified employees if there is going to be a layoff. And it's complicated, and it requires a lot of advanced planning, et cetera. So that was very interesting. And then the other interesting session that I thought was interesting had to do with Title IX and the various procedures and processes that, and I was very happy to see, I think, that at least on paper, Berkeley Unified School District does, in fact, comply with, by having a Title IX coordinator, by having an investigator, by having the various roles. But it's a process that requires constant oversight, constant diligence, and again, very complicated. The complaint procedure in and of itself is very complex. Okay, that's the conference. And I did listen to Commissioner Goldstein's comments about the election. And of course, it's a little premature because we do have to have an election on the at the next meeting. But as a preview, I certainly have no problem with electing Commissioner Goldstein as our next chair. But again, a little premature. Okay, I think that's, probably everybody's going to leave before we get to the end of the meeting. So I do want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, a happy Thanksgiving break, a very safe and restful, enjoyable Thanksgiving break to everybody. And hopefully everyone will be refreshed when they come back for the rest of the school year. Okay, those are my comments. Now our personnel director's comments.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. Thank you all for being here today. I realize it's the day before Thanksgiving break, and with school being out next week, we appreciate that you're here. And just wanted to apologize for the adjustment to our regular meeting time. So I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Sali. He got to visit our office last week, and he met with the Personnel Commission team, and we kind of were able to show him the ropes and kind of, discuss some of the work that we do for the commission. And so he appears very enthusiastic and committed to his new role, and we're genuinely looking forward to collaborating with him. And now turning to the personnel activity report for October, which is on page 6, we see that the PC staff has been exceptionally productive this month. We administered a total of 181 exams, including 55 training and experience assessments, 91 written exams, 13 oral exams, and 22 performance exams. So that averages about 7.9 exams per day. Also reflected in tonight's agenda, we successfully generated 9 eligibility lists, and we welcomed 9 new hires, 3 rehires, and 2 new assignments. Earlier this month, Chairperson Roeder and we met with Assistant Superintendent Samantha Tobias Espinoza to discuss the status of the class and comp study and the commission's recommendations. And she informed us that she was going to present both the study reports and the commission's report to the board in closed session at the November 20th meeting. Although Samantha wasn't able to join us this evening, she did ask me to share that the board did discuss the study, and they will have to discuss it further, more detail at the December 4th meeting in closed session again. And then lastly, I just want to share with the commissioners that the 2025 CSPCA conference is taking place again in Napa on March 16th to the 18th. And some of the commissioners already let me know that they plan to attend. And then I've also shared the conference information with BCCE and HR in case they'd like to attend as well. So that pretty much concludes my report for this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
I have a question/request. Did you think it would be possible for, in future items, to have the totals listed under those for that report, just because I thought it was very helpful when you let us know?
Oh, the totals? Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
And I wanted to follow up real quick about the CSPCA conference, but relatedly, when I first joined, and this is again for Sali's benefit, when I first joined the commission, each year the association puts on what they call a Merit Academy. And I found it tremendously helpful. It's a time commitment. I think it's 18 sessions, maybe not quite that many, but it's a lot of sessions. But you really dive into the merit rules, and I don't know if I know the statistics precisely, but and maybe Erin, you can help me with this if you know, or Heidi. That out of about 1,000 school districts in California, only about 90 or so are merit districts. So a little under 10% of our merit districts. However, of the population of the student population, and I think would hold true of classified employees as well, 60% of those are represented by merit districts. And there's a lot of, not a lot, but a few very large districts: Los Angeles, San Diego, Los Angeles County Office of Education. Those are very big districts. So the Merit Academy is something I'd recommend if you have the time.
No, I would definitely be interested. And I have already let staff know that I am interested in attending the conference. So whatever I need to do to let them know that I'm interested in the academy as well.
Great. Okay. Then onward to our consent items. Item 7, we have agreed to pull item 7A and 7I, and I will go ahead and move adoption of the other consent items, B through H of item 7.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Alpert?
And I agree.
Agreed. Okay, passes. So items 7B through 7H on consent are approved unanimously. So now let's have our discussion about item 7A. Was that you, Commissioner Alpert, who asked?
Do I suspect that my other commissioner, yes, also wanted to pull it? Yeah, I would just turn to our staff and say, you know, one name is always troubling, and we talked a little bit about this before the meeting. If you wanted to just give us an update about that.
Sure. Yes, so this was a very challenging recruitment. This is, although the position has existed in BUSD, it's always been a certificated position. And so they had so many challenges on the certificated side that they decided to convert it to a classified position. So when we posted the first time and we ran the first recruitment, although we did get a good amount of applications, that number kind of dwindled down to 3 total that took like the written exam, and then in the end, we only had 1 person that passed that first assessment. And so we got in touch with, it's a very, also like a very challenging panel to assemble for the oral exam, since we were looking at, you know, BSD stakeholders and external HR directors. So we contacted the only candidate and we let them know that we were going to repost the position and then run a second recruitment. And they mentioned that they were willing to wait for that to happen, so then we could schedule them into the second exam or the second recruitment. So when we did that second recruitment, we tried to expand our search as much as possible. We do have, we're members, different posting networks throughout California. And again, we got a considerable amount of applicants, but once that we started to run exams, that number went down. So in the end, ultimately, we only had 2 scheduled for an oral exam, and at that point, we lost 1. So we only had 1 move forward. They passed, they got on the list, but I don't believe that the district is gonna select that person after they've held their interview. So we're looking at potentially reposting or bringing it back to the certificated position that it was normally, you know, so.
Okay, can you tell me a little more, well, let me ask the easy question first, just to remember, where was this pegged in terms of compensation? Was this a range 85 position?
Yes, it
on-
was a range 85, and then, but we even started, we recruited at a step 3, I think is what we agreed, just to match we wanted to match the certificated salary schedule, and so the certificated at step 1 started at the equivalent of step 3.
Right, so roughly 150K
Yeah.
annual
Yeah.
salary. Okay, all right, that's what I thought I had remembered. Can you help me understand qualitatively what we think the difference is between recruiting for it as a certificated versus classified?
So first of all, they don't need the credential, the credential.
Right.
So we're hoping to open up the pool. When we discussed minimum qualifications, and those were set in place, we unfortunately were not able to get that candidate that met all of those MQs, you know, as far as their experience in the certificated world and HR, you know, we just couldn't find it, even though we like the qualifications for the position to not have to hold that administrative credential weren't there anymore, so.
You know, a question I have about administrative credential, you know, because I don't hold expertise on this. I am not aware about how deep the administrative credential actually goes into HR-related topics. Does the commission have a appreciation for that, as opposed to, an HR practitioner who might come with a SHRM or other, California PR or, some other kind of certification?
Yeah, I don't believe that even with the administrative credential, you need those HR certifications.
Well, no, I don't think the administrative credential requires the external HR certifications. I'm just sort of wondering, in the curriculum required for the administrative credential, how much of it really addresses HR at all, is what I'm wondering.
I don't believe that much of it does. I know that most of our HR directors at some point were principals, and so I don't believe there was that HR background that was necessary.
That's sort of my impression as well, and I think when, it was a while back when we reviewed the job description, and I think the question at the time was, did we require, a external credential, California Professional Human Resources, PHR, or, something similar. And I think we decided not to require it. So the feedback I'll give is, for an organization of BUSD's size, in the open market, I think the salary is low, which may mean you would get someone who has not necessarily gone for that credential. There are still lots of good folks out there who, don't pursue the credential. But I'm sort of wondering, just in my head, the wisdom of moving it back to a certificated position when, there is no meat with respect to the HR role that is included in that, certificated background. Why would we do that? As opposed to perhaps revisit the compensation and maybe possibly the need for a PHR certification. So my 2 cents on that.
Well, I'll follow up. I think I agree with you, Commissioner Goldstein, but maybe for different reasons. And that is that I agree that it never made that much sense to me that this would be a certificated position, because that limits dramatically the pool of applicants, number one, as we've seen, and number two, as Commissioner Goldstein said, the relevancy of the teaching credential, administrative is a little bit closer, but nonetheless, whether or not those credentials really make sense, that in the HR world, that it needs to be a certificated position, never made all that much sense. So I was happy to see that it came back to being a classified position. Now, I would look at it as maybe taking another look at our minimum qualifications and making sure that we're not artificially creating barriers for qualified applicants to apply for this position when it's not, really necessary. In our school district, the director of human resources isn't the top human resource official in our district. The assistant superintendent is. That could change.
I believe that actually has already
It
changed.
could be.
And that, I think that's part of the problem. Finish your comment.
Yeah, and that makes a difference. So I would just suggest, if you're looking at revising the either the job description or the classification in such a way as to get more applicants, then I would look at it, through that lens. Yes, Commissioner Halpern.
Well, thank you. First of all, it seems like there's been a lot of work that's gone into trying to recruit for this position. It's not just for getting one person, and that's where we've started, but this is after quite a bit of effort. I had a couple of questions. You were discussing the pay scale, but I'm not familiar with what those numbers mean. So I was wondering what the dollar amount was
So this pay scale, and this is something, have we shared with Commissioner Albert the, all the pay scales and the reports from the EHA and all the rest of that? So he has some reference docs to work with?
Not yet, no.
All right. You can look at this, but you can't have it right now. Okay. So
So we're looking at which one, 85 we were saying?
85, right.
85, okay.
I circled the middle,
Yeah.
with step 3.
Step 3, okay.
Okay, so.
And that's monthly?
Correct.
Okay.
And this is, it's also on the website, so if you go down to the HR and Personnel Commission websites, you can find these and.
And that's just, that's compensation but not benefits?
Correct, it's just straight up comp. So, as a follow-on to Chair's comments, the way an organization signals the reach, the power, and the influence of its HR organization is by the level at which it places the top position. I've always thought it's an error to have the top position not be an HR professional. In the past, BUHD has, had this role filled by certificated. My observation has been it was a way station for people who are interested in superintendent roles. And they learned a lot in the role. I'm not sure how much they brought to the role. I think the rest of the staff kind of helped them along here. And we have enough challenges in this school district and, just in this economy, by dint of where we are in Northern California, who we compete with for labor, et cetera, that I think we would benefit from a professional HR leader who has a lot of depth in the role. I am aware, and this is actually something I was planning to get staff to clarify for me, but, since we're talking about it, I'll bring it up now. I'm a little confused at how many assistant and associate superintendents BUSD has at this point. The merit rules allow some number of individuals, who would otherwise be in the classified service to be compensated off schedule, not by one of these, salary schedules. And they do it by the size of the district, by the enrollment of the number of students. I believe we're at about 9,200, and I believe that means that we can have 2 who are off schedule. By title and by compensation, it would appear to me that actually we have 4 people. We have our Associate Superintendent of Educational Services, Jill, I'm going to get her name wrong, Hogendijk. We have John Calise, we have Pauline Follensby, and we have Samantha Tobias Espinoza. So respectively, Calise is facilities and maintenance. Follensby is our CBO, our business officer, and Samantha is human resources. When I looked back at the documentation, about this, what I see last year at the mid-May meeting was in closed session. Those 4 folks were named. I see contracts for 3 of them. I don't see a contract for Samantha, who I'm aware is right now functioning as our lead negotiator with our labor partners. It isn't clear to me if Samantha is working on a temporary 90-day. There's a provision in Ed Code, that says, we can bring in special expertise, and pay it however we want, for a 90 workday period. July, August, September, October, now we're into November, we're probably done with the 90 days, and I think we need to understand where that is. And this is all as background to say, I believe what BUSD did last year was said they wanted their HR headed by a director level individual. And that's okay, it's a decision a district makes. It signals to the labor pool what you're looking for and what you're willing to pay, and, hopefully matches to the level of complexity of your institution. Personally, I think we benefit from someone more senior than that, but right now I'm confused about what we're doing. So something I will get in touch with Erin later on is, to try to understand, why I'm confused, to get some clarity on that. But in the meantime, what we have in front of us, as you've explained, is, a certification, an eligibility list, with one candidate who we think the district isn't going to go with. So right now, in effect, it would appear Samantha, is leading the department still.
I have not heard that yet.
And we have a vacancy in this role.
So I think as a matter of process, I think it's kind of, it isn't going to make any difference one way or another, but as a matter of process, we should probably approve this eligibility
I agree.
list. And it may not just, again, Commissioner Alpert may already know this, but under the merit rules, under the Ed Code, we operate under a so-called rule of three, which basically means that the hiring authority has to choose among the three top tiers on the eligibility list. That can actually result in more than three individuals if there's a tie, but when there's only one or when there's only two, then the hiring authority can basically reject the list and say, go back and do some more recruitment. We need somebody else, potentially hire on a temporary basis, that sort of thing. I think I've got that more or less right. Erin and Heidi, I look to you.
I had a few more questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
So the institutions I'm most familiar with are the Rent Board and the city of Berkeley. And could you just explain a little bit the difference between, in the context of the city of Berkeley, the people who are director level are hired in a different process than folks below them, right? That they're, they can be hired and fired at will, and they're not hired through the civil service process in the same way. But this is a director level position, but that's coming through the civil service process. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yes, so this is a classified position, and so most of our classified positions all have to go through the same merit process. And so there are a few, and I think Heidi was mentioning some of what we call like the unranked lists for high-level positions that are in contracts. So that would be, I know the assistant soup of business services, for example, they're not certificated, they're classified, but because they have a contract, we still would initiate a recruitment, but it wouldn't be the same as like our regular recruitments. And so we generate what's called an unranked list for just very few positions like those.
Gotcha. And then one thing that would be useful, I guess, in the nomenclature is a little bit different, right? What the city of Berkeley would call a director is probably what we would call an assistant superintendent. So then the director here might be a deputy director at the city. Do we have comparisons for like the city, what the city pays for their deputy directors of HR?
What the city of Berkeley pays, we don't use them, we don't have them handy, but we can definitely look them
That
up.
would be something I would be interested just to compare, we're pretty similar sized.
Generally, when we peer, and as you see our classification compensation study, we peer to other school districts. Typically because, the belief is that, the subject matter of what you're dealing with in the role is sort of similar. Of course, we compete with lots of other employers.
Yeah.
So it would be a data point, but, just to make clear that when we did our class and comp study, we peered to other school districts.
Great. Okay. And then this is a request. I would love at some future meeting if we could get, for probably my benefit more than anyone else's, just a review of the organizational structure of the district. That would be something I think would be really beneficial. Yeah.
Can definitely do that.
Okay, thank you. So this has been a very good discussion, obviously. We do need to move along. So is there a motion to adopt this list?
Sure. You want to do it one by each for the two things that we pulled?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'll go ahead and move we adopt 7A.
Second.
Moved and seconded, I agree, so 7A is adopted. And then the last one was, I think is it I? 7I, which is the student admissions specialist. I think that's on page 15. Now, that is a lengthy list, and I think Ms. Scher had some comments she wanted to make about it.
Would it be helpful at first just to hear from staff about how this recruitment was conducted, just so we can kind of get a baseline?
Sure,
about what was
good
going on?
idea. Erin, would that be all right?
Sure. Okay, so the student admission specialist, we initiated this recruitment not because we have a vacancy, but because two of the staff that are currently in the admissions department are on leave. I believe one's like on a full-time leave. So in order to generate an eligibility list to have a list of potential, candidates that could serve in limited term assignments, we moved forward and we recruited for this position. We have noticed some trends. They'll probably be more apparent in next year's annual report, but you can somewhat see it in this year's annual report. We're getting a lot more applications. For whatever reason, we're getting a lot for certain specific, mostly clerical positions. And so in this case, we had a lot. And so we had about 89 applicants. And we screened based on the minimum qualifications. Ultimately, we ended up inviting 60 candidates to take the written exam. And so when after we ran the first written exam, and I know we've had discussions regarding pass points here, and so we, at the time, were currently setting 70 as our pass point, since we didn't get any resolution in those conversations with our previous director about changing those pass points. Because we set the pass point at 70, we had 29 people moving forward to the next exam. So usually a second exam will take place, and we'll make it a bit different than the first exam. We'll set up like either an oral exam or a performance exam, kind of just narrow down that number. And in this particular case, because we had 29 people moving to the second exam, we needed to adjust that second exam so that we could make it possible to move forward with, and we couldn't do that like in the normal way where we would set up a panel, like an oral exam panel, where we have to invite, either external or internal panelists that can sit in and run essentially interviews all day. We were talking about 29 people. So there has been opportunities in the past where we've generated what's called like a written performance exam. And so it's a bit more of a technical exam where we give like candidates prompts, like real life prompts that they would perform in their positions and then have them, perform an assignment. And so that's why we called it like a performance exam. It's not like a general fitness written exam. And so that's kind of what we did in this, for this recruitment. We ran a second exam, and we called it the performance exam because it's definitely, there's a performance piece to it that wasn't the case in the first exam. And so then we narrowed it down, and so we were still able to generate a very robust list here. And so that's, I think, why we see so many people on this list. But I think Ms. Scher might have a different concern about it.
I do. That made it even worse, though, actually, the whole explanation. So I'm grateful, let's be clear, of the fact that we are getting the list and we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we have a list, because I am aware of why that we have, 2 subs in there right now, and what's going on in that situation. But my concern is the 2 written exam, because even reading our merit rules and the way that our merit rules reads, there shouldn't be 2 written tests. Our merit rule reads as it being an oral, a written, and we do know that there's a performance piece that is usually for custodial or maintenance, something like that. And then even on the job description in itself, it breaks down that it was, let me see, I have it up. It breaks down, on the job description, it says the testing process may consist of a written exam, an oral exam, a performance exam, a structured interview, a qualification appraisal interview, an evaluation of training and experience education, which is, I guess, that's supposed to be, according to this, the training and experience examination, which I guess is basically for kind of lower level positions, and that's just basically looking at the application and seeing if they qualify, which is not even really an exam. And that's just not the way we are supposed to do things. It's supposed to be 50% written, 50% oral. And my concern is that we are picking and choosing how we are administering exams based off of classifications. There's no consistency. And again, it goes back to the concern of our cut score. That was one of the concerns there also, is because there's no consistency. We don't know what's going on. The union doesn't know what's going on. We don't know what test is going to be this, what test is going to be that, because even if you look at the school admin 3 test, or if you look at the school admin 2 test, it was oral and written, which are higher or kind of the same as a student admission specialist. It shouldn't matter the number of applicants on how we are going to give an exam. So if we look at the student admissions or the school admin 3, that was written and oral. I don't care about the number of applicants. But then when we look at the student admission specialist, it was written and written. And then it's kind of like, what is considered a technical written? It's still a written exam, so we gave 2 written exams. That's not what it states in our merit rules. So I'm quite concerned on how we did that, and is that really fair to the people? So I have a concern, because there's no consistency across the board. And then even if the DSA, I was actually looking at that also, because even our DSA position, and I look at the job description and certain things that they do, that should not have been a training and experience examination. That should have been written and oral. It's not the same as an IA. So I'm trying to figure out, what are we doing here? I would like to see consistency. And I think the union has a right to know what exactly is going on, and not finding out after the fact, to where then we have to come here and then say all of this and say, okay, and then people are feeling like we're gonna pull things or argue things and then cause, you know what I mean? And then it just causes a lot of back and forth or things like that. But it's easier when we know what's going on, we know the process and procedures. So if you look at the merit rules, it says one thing. When you're looking at the job description, it says, something, but then the exam is saying something completely different, and across the board, it's too much. So I do have a concern, and I would like to see, before we put anything out there for student admission specialists, I would like to see it be done correctly. It's not that much different in the job description between the student admission specialist and a school admin. They're both actually the same range, but then we gave totally 2 different, processes, and that's not fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I have some comments, but first, the other commissioners, if they'd like to make any comments. Well, I'll go ahead and make my comments. So we've been grappling with test scores and how to set test scores. And I think that our executive director, interim executive director, finds herself between a rock and a hard place, because I agree with everything that Ms. Scher just said, with one exception, and that is that the number of applicants doesn't matter. I think the number of applicants does matter a lot, because I believe that there's only one reason to raise the test score, and that is if the number of applicants who would otherwise pass and move on to the oral portion of the exam are so many, so great, that it's really virtually impossible to find panels to do that testing. And that's the reason to increase, in my opinion, to increase the test score. Now, we've been told many times that increasing the test score beyond 70 is unfair and basically shouldn't be done. So I think that our executive director has taken those comments to heart and said, okay, fine, we will keep the test score at 70. Well, that results in 29 applicants who passed. That's a lot of applicants. That's a lot of attempting to do panels. Now, I'm not saying it would be impossible. I don't know if it's impossible to have oral panels for 29 people. I don't know what the number is, but it seems that it's not arbitrary on the part of our executive director to make a decision where we can't have so many, it's just physically impossible to have so many oral exams. So we're going to do something that's in the nature of a hybrid. We're going to do, and I don't know what this exam actually consisted of, but something that's going to be part performance, part written. It's going to test performance based on written evaluations. That doesn't strike me anyway as so far out of the norm as to be improper. I think it was sort of a creative approach for a difficult situation. But we do need to, in the future, I think, in the near future, have another discussion about test scores and how we want those to be administered, et cetera. Commissioners? Nothing? Okay. Ms. Scher, one follow-up, please, and then we'll have to keep going. We have a long
Okay, I
agenda.
just want to say, I agree with you and I disagree. I want to be clear because when I say that numbers doesn't matter, I should say that, that's subs, right? We need a lot of subs. So testing everyone or figuring out how we will test those people, I'm sure we can do. I still disagree with the fact that we should not create our own processes. The process needs to be clear for everyone. And just because we have a large number doesn't mean that we create something at that moment for that particular group. The process needs to be the same across the board. And I don't know what this written technical performance consists of. And again, it's the same group as another group, but they received an oral and they received a written. But this particular group received something completely different. And that's not correct. And that's not the way our merit rules read. Again, it's supposed to be 50% written, 50% oral, especially when you're dealing with the clerical admin type pool, not a written technical performance that we have no idea what that even is.
And may I ask what merit rules we think apply to this? I mean, I know you have them memorized, and I think probably Mildred has them written down.
It is, sorry, it's 40, it's in the 40, it's a 40.200. So examination procedures, 40.200.7. So when you read all, I just read the whole section. I learned from Commissioner Rhoda how you have to read the whole thing and not parts. So I read the whole thing and it breaks down what it's supposed to be and just talks about written, oral, and performance. It's a lot. So if you read that whole part, you violated our merit rules.
So a different question I have for staff, and I'm not sure, off the top of your head, if you're aware of this. The dynamic of increased applicants, is always a good thing. And, for sure, for, the clerical or the more entry roles is likely where we're going to see it. Is there precedent for how you handled this? Have we done this for other recruitments? Do you remember?
I believe we have, yeah, we have a few times we've had to.
Do we know recently or,
I know we have, I can't, yeah, I can get that information,
right.
I'm not, yeah.
And, part of the reason I'm asking is it's not trivial to run a panel. In the past, what you've told us is in a day, a panel can get to 5 or 6 people. So, for 29 applicants, that's 5.5 days worth of panel. And there are issues with keeping panels consistent. Typically, you want the same evaluators for the whole class that you're evaluating, so that you can kind of calibrate to that. So, I look at that on the one hand and I think, that is not feasible. I think we probably learned something about the test. The test was probably too easy. If we want to keep the cut score at 70, we certainly learned something about the test for the future. When you did the practicum, I would say the practicum was also too easy because you got 18 people, I think, is what I see on this list. So, we learned something from that as well. And, when I look at this, I'm sure we need to look at 40.2.7, but we probably need to look at other aspects of the merit rules to decide, if there are other bits of the merit rule in terms of discretion, that apply, when we have a situation where the volume is overwhelming. So based on that, what I'm inclined to do is propose that we delay this for one meeting, so that we can review those rules, and not do it real time at this meeting to try to understand, if we think the way the process worked can hold, and why, or not. Thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, and I just looked at 4200.7, and then, basically the 4200 series, which deals with examinations. And I don't actually see where this process in any way violated those rules. I don't see it. It would have to be pointed out to me. I think that, okay.
If you read 40.200, B, it talks about the oral examination and how it consists. C, goes to oral.
I'm sorry, 4200.7B?
40.200.7.
Yes.
C, it talks about the oral examination, written, hold on, and then H is the written.
Yeah, I read all those.
And then, 40.200.9 talks about the rating.
Yeah. Yes, that's all right, I understand. Well, again, with all due respect, I see those, I read those, and I don't see where anything is violated. My personal feeling is that I think, as I said, I think our executive director was in a difficult position, and I think we do have to give, I agree with Ms. Scher about consistency, absolutely, and transparency, and I think we definitely can work on that.
Well, let me ask you this, where does it say in here about two written and a written performance? It doesn't say anything like that, it only speaks on oral and written.
Well, all it
Whole
says,
section.
is examination shall be administered objectively and shall consist of at least 2 independent parts. And that's exactly what was done.
Different, it doesn't say two written.
It says 2 independent parts. And we did two independent parts, as I see it and as I read it.
I read it completely different because it's saying two different. It doesn't
do-
say two of the same.
But I don't see the word different there. I see the word independent.
Where are you reading?
4200.7A. So my feeling on this is that I would be good with approving this list, but I'll defer to the other commissioners. Yes, Mr. Alpert?
There's a lot that I have questions about that I'll save for later, about kind of the cut score. It sounds like there's a lot of context and history around cut scores and various of these rules. I guess generally as a philosophy, I'm always in favor of formalizing our rules. And so if there's going to be, if we're finding that there are too many applicants, or not too many, a large number, we'll say, of applicants at either the first or the second stage, that generally it would be great to have a formal criteria for a certain number triggering a separate process and having that be formalized and codified. But that doesn't seem to me, that seems like something we should do in the future. I don't know that that should impact what we do with this list, I guess philosophically. So I guess I'd be more predisposed to moving forward with this list as is, but then coming to a standard for if a certain number of applicants make it to the second stage, that triggering a separate process because of the kind of logistical impacts.
I would support that too. I know we discussed having a rubric for like when we set cut scores, when we have to raise them above 70, and that was something we wanted to talk about. So I would totally support, that would make our job easier too, to know, when we have to change the process, but we just never know when we're going to get 100 applications or 150 applications.
And I think that would also go some ways toward addressing the concern from the union, which is transparency, right? If we have on paper, here's what we're going to do. When there are X number of applicants, we do this. When there's Y number of applicants, or above Y number of applicants, we do Y for both the first and the second stage. Then it's all laid out. So that would be my thoughts. But I definitely have a lot of questions for both for staff and the union about kind of the history here.
I think I'll fill in a question because even when I'm reading C, it says when two oral examinations are ordered by the commission, one shall be a technical oral and the other general fitness evaluation oral. At least 2 members of a technical oral board must be technically qualified in the occupational area being examined. So to me, even still reading this whole section, it states that when you're doing the oral part, it breaks down how you get those to that oral part. And then when it speaks on the written, it just says written examination. It doesn't say a written technical and a written oral.
Yeah, I read that too.
So if you read the whole section, like you taught me, Commissioner Roder, it's pretty clear on how you do a written and how you do an oral. So I'm not understanding on how this part is like, but I'm gonna go ahead and go what you guys say. I just disagree. Because even reading this, it's very clear that there's a written part and there's an oral part, and how that oral part is done.
No, the only thing I would say, Ms. Scher, is that C, 200.7C, starts out when 2 oral examinations are ordered by the commission.
Right.
We didn't order 2 oral examinations. There was just 1.
I understand it, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, but there was a written test.
Right, now I understand.
You know what I mean?
I understand. Nope.
Completely different, and that's not the way it reads in here. It just says when you give us the written exam, it's the way it's done. It's the written exam. It doesn't say you can give a written technical and a written. It's not the way it reads.
I don't.
So,
Okay.
read this whole section, I'm telling you, it's not, we made up a whole test.
Correct.
We just made up a whole test just based off of us having a certain number of applicants, and I think that we're still violating our rules. But whatever you guys say is fine with me.
Thank you. And I agree with,
Just this time.
I agree with Mr. Alpert. Is it time for a motion?
I just do have one question. We use practical exams periodically. And, what can constitute a practicum can be a bunch of different things. I want to see how you clean the room. I want to see how you cook the meal, right? So this was a practicum that was sort of like a task assignment. I want to see how you sort the students, for admissions or, whatever it is that you did it, right? When do we decide generally that we need to use practicums? I mean, I don't think a practicum is a written exam, in the vein of, two independent things. I mean, you really could have two written, I guess, that rule is written loosely enough, but, really, this seemed different, really seemed like a practicum. And just historically, I'm sort of wondering, how do we determine when we need practicums?
So usually that's done, before we even post the position. But, we have to move as we're going. And in this case, we had the scenario come up
Right.
with all of and we didn't want to raise the cut score, but we also wanted to schedule the second exam. So we had to
Got it.
we have to be flexible at times. And
The reason I'm asking this is, again, for, Soli's benefit, one of the projects we've been working on is a rewrite of the merit rules, which, are decades old and have needed a refresh. So I think, we're learning something in this, and I know, Chair Roeder has been spearheading that, and I think is most of the way through, but, this looks like something, if, we haven't already made provisions for this, is a good idea, so.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But I agree, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve consent item number 7I?
I'll go ahead and motion, because, we basically have reviewed the documents, in real time to come to our conclusion. So, yes, I'll motion to go ahead.
I'll second.
And approve
Moved
7I.
and seconded, I agree. So item 7I is approved. We now have our discussion item, which is reclassification requests, post-classification and compensation study. So just a very brief introduction to it, and then turn it over to our executive director and then for discussion. And that is that, as we all know, a classification compensation study was performed. I would call it informally. Informally, our prior executive director put in place a moratorium on requests for reclassifications. Because in a sense, that's what, at least in part, the classification study was going to accomplish. Now, there were exceptions to that. There were some reclasses that were performed. Now, we are finished with the at least initial stages of that class and comp study. It's been referred to the school district, the school board, for action. It's been referred clearly to the unions for meet and confer and bargaining about it. So now, as I see it anyway, we're back to being able to go through our, for want of a better term, normal process of reclassification, where either individuals or groups of employees would come first to the executive director, who would look at it, then to the personnel commission, and action would be taken after conferring and understanding what the union's position is about it, and also what the district's position is. So, Erin, do you want to add anything to that brief summary?
you covered everything that I was going to say, so.
Okay, all right. Well, I know, at least I think I know, that Ms. Scher wanted to make a comment, I think, about this as well, but we can also hear from our commissioners first as well, either way.
Maybe I'll just comment that in our class and comp study, this was flagged as something for review on wage, changing salary range. It was also reviewed, as Erin brought up, for upgrade, in terms of just what the job description says, the actual duties are. So it's sort of nice to see that we can use the data from the class and comp study, for something here. We held off, we did the research, we got the answer back, and yes, we need to look at it.
Okay. Ms. Scher, did you want to make a comment about this, or?
I just want to clarify something real quick. I just want to make sure that we understand that this is not based off of the classification study.
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we separate the two, because the library's media specialist did ask for this a year ago. And according to the BCCE contract, when they asked for this, it had nothing to do with the classification study. So our contract reads in 611.1B, a request for reclassification together with the statement of the reasons for requesting a study or the reclassification or both. Such request shall not be denied on the grounds the unit member did not identify or misidentify whether the request was for a study of their classification or a request for a reclassification. And they had come together as a group. And they're totally being supported by their director. And I also want to be clear that it has nothing to do with the general fund, because we also know what we're going through with that. So this is completely separate from the general fund. I want to make sure that's clear. But any BCCE member that may be listening to the Personnel Commission right now, I want them to understand that this is something that happened prior to the classification study, and something that they were doing on their own and not a part of that whole thing, because we just know that this whole classification study is a big mix-up and concerns and a lot of things. So, but we are, we support and hope that they get what should have been done a whole almost 2 years ago. Okay?
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Scher.
you.
Thank you. Okay, well, this was just really a general discussion about this. And now that we're on the conference items, and the first conference item is a request for reclassification, library media specialist. It's 2:17. We've been at it for almost an hour and a half. I'm going to declare a brief 5-minute recess or so, and then we'll get on to this item. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to reconvene, and we are on item 9A, which is the request for reclassification for the library media specialist. So I think the way we'll handle this is our interim executive director will introduce the item, and then if there aren't questions from the commissioners, then we'll open it up either to the union for comment or to anyone who in the public who wishes to make a comment. There's a lot of people here. If you could try to be as succinct and non-repetitive as possible, that would be greatly appreciated. But let's get started.
Okay, so as we discussed earlier, the library media specialists have submitted a joint request to reclassify their positions, expressing that they believe that their role has been misclassified. I've actually had initial conversations with some library media specialists, and they have shared concerns about their placement on the salary schedule. I recommend that we proceed with the reclass process by also reviewing the documents that they've submitted, and then also revisiting some of the materials that they provided to EHA during the class study to minimize, the need for them to make duplicate efforts. And then also one thing to note is that EHA did not recommend a reclassification for this group, but their salary study indicates that the library media specialists are paid 12.4% below the median compared to peer districts in their analysis.
Okay, any question? I have a sort of technical question, but other questions from the commissioners? Yes, Mr. Alpert.
Once again, the newbie has some technical, some procedural questions. So reclassification, is that something that is entirely within our purview, or would that be a recommendation we make to the board?
So it's definitely under the commission's purview, but when we are ready to present any changes, depending on what those recommendations are, they may need to go to the board for approval.
And given where we are in the board's budget timeline, would that be something we would submit as part of the overall budget process, or would that be considered separately?
It would be separate.
Okay.
So my question, Aaron, is a little bit related to that, I think, and that is, most commonly, we do reclassifications, and we're familiar with that process. But, and here, please correct me or Heidi if I'm wrong about this, another function of the Personnel Commission is to make sure that salaries are aligned internally within the whole compensation structure and salary structure of the district. And, you know, the concept being one of like pay for like work, that sort of thing. And I guess, and you may not know how to answer this, but I don't really know how those two, the classification, reclassification, fits in with the idea of placing or changing where a group of employees fits in that salary structure. I have sort of a conceptual quandary about that.
So my experience with this is somewhat limited, but I do know that in the past, we've been able to, for example, update salaries and not even have to reclassify a position, as long as we're analyzing the comparing our salaries to other similar positions. But as far as when a reclassification takes place, I believe that we're looking for those gradual accretion of duties, and then those duties then impact the knowledge, skills, abilities, and the minimum qualifications for a position, and then those would then impact the salary placement, or where we recommend that the salary be placed.
Yes, Commissioner Goldstein.
From EHA, just, you know, so we're all clear on what they said about what we currently call library media specialist. Their evaluation said the position is properly classified and continues to be assigned work typical of that characterized in the library media specialist job description. However, the job title of library specialist is a more appropriate job title for this classification. So what this makes me wonder is, or think really is, you know, as we look at this, we want to double back and understand what do library specialist jobs look like? Because obviously when they did their survey, you know, that was the title they saw that best matched to what they thought they saw here, you know, as a matter of the study. And when they did that, and they did the evaluation to peer salaries, what they found was that our library media specialist positions were almost 13% below peer comp, you know, for, I think, what they mostly saw as jobs called, you know, library specialist. That's what I think, but I think it's worth double checking that. Right now, as a matter of internal alignment on salaries, this job sits on salary range 45 under schedule. I always have trouble reading the schedules. Help me, Aaron, which schedule is this one?
So
First one.
it's, so it would be, so it would be Schedule 56.
That's what I thought. Okay. This really isn't marked as such. So, you know, assuming that, you know, EHA got it right and they think, you know, generally speaking, that the, you know, the work that is being done, you know, matches to what the classification says, and it's just the title that they're suggesting changing, you know, that's really what you're being asked to investigate, right? You know, is that work in the job description, matching to what's been done, or has there been accretion of duties? And is a reclass warranted? I don't know, does that help? The reclass, this is the more senior of our library positions, right? There's a technician title and there's a specialist title. So, it isn't clear to me that there's a problem with internal salary alignment.
Okay, well,
Not yet.
I don't know.
Right.
Putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but maybe we'd like to hear both from the union and from any of the employees who wish to address us.
Hi, my name is Jessica Lee, and I'm the library coordinator. So I oversee the work of the library specialists as well as the library technicians, et cetera. And I want to clarify the request because it looks like you're looking at a few different documents and you keep referencing the results of the EHA study. And that came much later than this particular request. So I want to go back to the original request. There is a classification called instructional specialists that exists at every elementary school. And the instructional specialists cover gardening, dance, cooking, art, drama, and all those positions are in that one classification. And then there are library specialists. And for whatever reason, when that position was initially created, it was not looped in with the instructional specialists. And it was placed at a lower pay grade. The library specialists are requesting that they be moved into the group with the other instructional specialists so that they are a member of a peer group. That is the request. It does involve a salary bump to make them equal with their peers who are doing similar work at their same school sites. Do you have any questions for me as the budget manager and person who oversees their roles?
I do, but Mr. Alpert, go ahead.
I think reference was made to two separate library classifications. This was a library specialist, and the other one I believe was library technician.
Yes.
So if we were to move the library specialists in with the other instructional specialists, what would that leave the library tech class? Would that create an issue there, or are they properly, I guess?
It's actually a benefit to the library techs because currently they are two separate positions. They're not like a ladder. And so for a library tech to move into a specialist position, it would actually take a pay cut. So there's no incentive for them to ever move up because it would move back to step one. And so if they take this salary realignment, it would make step one of a specialist equivalent with step 5 of a technician. So then it would be an opportunity for technicians to move up a ladder.
Gotcha, thank you.
And I do want to side comment, I have dropped the term media from their job titles because it's a very antiquated job title. And so I would just love for in this process if we could lose that word. It confuses applicants, it's unnecessary, but that's so beside the point of the rest of this conversation.
Aaron, please.
Jessica, what did you mean by they would take a pay cut, the library media tech?
As a technician described it to me when they asked about becoming a specialist, they were told that they would have to go back to step 1 as their first year as a
That's not
specialist.
accurate, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so if a specialist, if a tech were to promote into the specialist position, HR, it's a higher range, and so what HR basically does per the CBA is that they would give them at least 5% more than what they currently make.
Okay.
So if they're at a step 5 in a tech position and they went into, if the 3 match their salary, they would go into step 4.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah.
But it would still
That's good to
benefit,
hear.
it would still benefit the techs if the library specialist was higher, they would have a larger range to promote through.
They
Yes.
would promote into a higher salary range.
And the role of the specialist is significantly more complex than the roles of technicians.
I really appreciate your clarification on that. So what I'll just share with this group is the current position is a range 45. The instructional specialist position is at a range 51. There are about 2.5% difference, in the step across the ranges. So, 6 times 2.5 is whatever it is.
Thank you. I did have a question about, in your written comments, having to do, sort of following up on what Commissioner Alpert was saying. It's not directly relevant, I don't think, to what we do, but it is, and it has to do with budgeting. And you indicated that the budget for the library specialist, I guess library tech as well, is not out of the general fund, but rather is out of BSEP.
Yes, that's correct.
Funds. And I think, if I understood correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said that you had reserved
Yes.
somewhere around $120,000, I think, and that the actual increase would be about $80,000. I'm just doing this from memory. I don't
Yes,
know if it's accurate.
That sounds like what I remember as well, yes.
Okay. So one question is, on an ongoing basis, you have to know, I'm a member of the audit committee too, for the school district, so I kind of pay attention to this stuff. On an ongoing basis, how will those funds, will BSEP, I mean, this will be a hit to BSEP going forward. You've reserved money now for almost 2 years' worth. How about in the out years?
So one thing to understand about BSEP is that each department or program gets a portion of BSEP that is specifically for that department. So the only group that's impacted by the salary increase would be libraries. So I'm not taking money from the music department or some other department. Within the library budget, it's a $2.3 million budget. So this is an adjustment to the budget going forward, but given that I have plenty of lead time and a reserve, it's not too hard to adjust the other numbers, put a little bit less in capital investments every year. So instead of $100,000 that I have allocated this year, maybe next year it'll be $60,000.
I see. Good. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
And it won't affect the book budget.
Okay. Mr.
I
Albert.
should say, in high school, I worked at my school library, so I definitely appreciate it won't affect the book budget.
And also to clarify, like, we are talking about the library techs and the library specialists, but there are other positions that are credentialed positions also in the library department as well.
Right. Which is not something within our
Not
purview.
something, yeah, just clarifying.
Okay. Any other
questions?
Ms. Goldstein, did you have
Not for me.
a question?
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Anybody? Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to make a comment?
The fact that the director came here and answered the questions that would be asked when the reclass is actually done just made it so much simpler to where we don't have to put off time on something that can actually happen now. So I would just like, I would kind of urge the commission to just really take heed to the information that was provided today, especially on how long that the library media specialists have been waiting for something that should have happened a while ago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess my thought after hearing all of this is that certainly it's appropriate to do an analysis of reclassification. But I think in addition to analysis of reclassification, even if it turns out that the classification is accurate, in other words, that the employees are performing work as described in the classification specification, and there has been no gradual accretion of additional duties over a 2-year period. Even if all of that were true, I think that an analysis of whether or not this group of employees is properly placed in the salary schedule is still worth analyzing. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but it strikes me as it's worth analyzing. Mr. Albert.
Yeah, based on my reading of these documents and the presentation we've seen, it seems to me appropriate that the library specialists are included with all the other specialists who are performing similar duties in other areas. I think that would be the recommendation that you put in front of us would be initiating that process.
I think first, we need the analysis to
Right.
understand, is that the case?
Right. I am inclined to believe so and would like to make sure that that's the case. But definitely also would like to express support for the changing of the name as well, just to remove the media, if that is appropriate based on the duties they're performing. And that's also based on the something.
Right, the EHA.
The EHA study, if that was generally found to be consistent with other districts.
Right.
Well, that sounds to me like a motion.
Sure.
You want to restate that one?
I guess my one question is, how long is that going to take? Because I wasn't here when the moratorium was instituted, and I don't know that I would have wanted these folks to have to wait as long as they did. So if we initiate this process, when we can expect it back to us to finalize that process?
Well, I can't properly answer that question just yet. There's a lot of transitions taking place, and so, and then the holidays, but I definitely would want to get it done sooner than later.
Okay, then I guess I would make that motion, but also with the request that we get an update at our next meeting, regardless of what the status is, just to make sure that we can ensure that it's coming timely.
Absolutely.
So as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sully, the motion is to direct our executive director, interim executive director, to analyze the reclassification request for this group and include within that analysis an analysis of whether or not this group is properly placed within the salary structure, and in particular, whether their work is sufficiently similar to that of the instructional specialists, yes, instructional specialists, to warrant a modification of the salary structure.
Yeah.
That more or
And
less-
to report progress in December.
and to report progress in December, and to remove the title media from the title.
Yes.
Is that, whose domain is that? Is that
That's a good
ours or the
question.
school boards? I mean, it's a small thing, but I think it's their
Right.
domain.
I guess then we would be forwarding a request to the board.
Oh, so they have the recommendations, right? They have this as part of the recommendation set, right? The recommendations, are multifaceted.
My one concern would be, because there's been, just from a procedural perspective, because there's separate concerns about the study, and that seems to be a larger process, and this came separately and earlier, I don't think that it would hurt to separately make that request outside of the study, so that it comes to them, if the study is going through another procedure, this can come to them separately.
All right, so I'd suggest a separate motion then, because I think that the Associate Superintendent for HR is the one who is honchoing the recommendations with the board. And if we want to ask her to separate something out and ask the board to consider it earlier and separately, I think that's probably the way to do it.
Okay. So then I guess, and that would be, so separating the title, we'll have one motion.
Right. Wait, for first motion, let's just do the first motion,
Yes.
which I think is to direct, our interim executive director to analyze the request both for reclass and for range placement, basically, right? And then to let us know in December how you're doing on that.
Can I just make one comment? I think to be consistent with past practice, changing the title would be appropriate when we've updated the job description and gone through the reclass. Because it may be that, and I I would leave it to the experts, but maybe media should still stay. I'm not saying that it should, but I think we should probably do that all together when the job description's updated and, you know, the analysis has been done.
Okay,
Aaron read my mind.
All right, so.
I defer to that.
So the first part, though, you know, stays, right?
Yes.
You know, reevaluating all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That is my
your
motion, yes.
I will second
As all
that
of you have so
motion.
articulately stated.
All right, let's see, Sarah, do you have this is all on the recording, so you'll be able to listen to it again, but do you have a general idea what the motion is? Okay.
Okay.
Then it's been moved and seconded, and I agree, passes unanimously.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
thank you.
So let's see, our next item is a step advance request from M. Borden, Director of Facilities, Maintenance, and Operations, pages 34 through 39. And Aaron, could you present this, please?
Sure. So presenting a request for advanced step placement for Maurice Borden. He's accepted the Director of Facilities, Maintenance, and Operations position in the Facilities Department. He requested a placement at step 2 on the classified salary schedule for this role. This recruitment has been particularly challenging. The position was newly created by the district and posted back in August of 2023. And 6 candidates were placed on the eligibility list at the time. But once interviews were scheduled, 4 of those candidates ended up declining either the interview or they declined the job offer. Several of them cited the salary as a concern for them. So we reopened the recruitment in June of this year, and we generated another list of 6 eligible candidates, and then we ultimately made a job offer for Mr. Borden, who accepted. And he actually brings nearly 20 years of facilities management experience. He led a multi-million dollar budgets and capital projects at the American Academy of Ophthalmology and at Samuel Merritt University. He does, however, lack experience in school districts operations and private sector accomplishments, but you know, given all of his qualifications and the challenges of this recruitment, I do recommend that he receive his request for placement at step 2.
Thank you, Aaron. I'll just make a real quick comment. This is something, Mr. Alpert, you may already understand, but sort of a 2-step process, and each step has a lot of parts to it. But the first step is, was this a difficult recruitment? Because we have had, and it's striking and kind of upsetting to some extent, we've had extremely qualified applicants, new hires, who have come to the commission and with wonderful qualifications. But we've had to deny their request because the recruitment just wasn't such a difficult recruitment. So that's, you know, the threshold question. And then comes the issue of how qualified is the individual.
One more dimension also
Yes.
to this, just while we're, you know, giving you a tutorial. There is a limited window of time in which to request the advanced step. So a question for Aaron is, when was this individual hired?
So I don't have the date written down here, but it was in the last month, I believe, like
Right,
November.
it was, if the recruitment was in June,
Yeah.
it was within the 6 month.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right,
Unofficially, and that's something that we need to include in
Fix
our
in our-
merit, in our
in our
revise
rules.
of the merit
Yeah.
rules.
So we
We've been
don't-
using 6 months.
hired in
It's
October.
November. like November 1st, maybe.
It shows here hire date
Okay.
of November 4th.
Oh, November 4th. Yeah.
Where do you see that? How did I miss that?
Page 35, up at the top, hire date.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I believe you, I missed it.
I have a question, not about this position, but about practices. You know, we just,
Oh, sure.
we've got the class and comp study, which is, you know, evaluating one set pay, and we were comparing with other jurisdictions. Do we have any kind of process for when we receive these reclassifications for difficult hires? That seems to be a good indication that they're not guarantee, but a good indication there could be a problem with our pay scale. Do we have a way of tracking that or flagging that so that we can consider whether, you know, not just to make a, you know, adjustment for this individual, but whether that reflects the need for an adjustment in the pay scale for that position?
So we don't currently track data on who has received a step advance request. That actually would be really valuable. We
This
do.
is not a reclass, step advance.
Right, step advance, excuse me,
Advance,
yes.
sorry. But we did create a rubric, which you will find in the packet there somewhere. So, which indicates what the factors are that we consider when we decide to grant a step advance. We do not, though, have data on who's currently received. We typically look at those recruitments where we have a lot of vacancies. However, every recruitment's going to be different, and it's kind of hard to know in advance what's going to be a challenging recruitment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that it might be useful to track in terms of whether step advances are indicators in some positions of a need for a reclass.
I would say that, you know, when I think about the mechanisms here, the union negotiates for wages, right? You know, and basically that sets those, you know, these salary schedules, right? The reason we did the class and comp study was to try to get an idea of, you know, where do we sit, at least, you know, according to our peers, right? If you compared our salaries to Google's, you know, we'd be behind in everything, right? You know, so it all depends on what you compare it to. But yes, the history of the commission is because the last class and comp study was done in 2012, you know, and wasn't fully implemented until like June 30th of 2016. It took a long time. Sort of the only mechanism we've had, you know, to do this is to look at reclasses and look at advanced step requests. So a look back is a little flawed because we really had no other mechanism. You know, we should be at a point now, you know, the union is negotiating salary, we're sort of fresh off a class and comp. You know, we're about as current as we can get. So this is a good time to start, I think, keeping that data.
Great.
There's one other factor. I hate to go into all of this stuff, but I think it's useful. There's one other factor that we have heard many times, both from employees and from union officials, when it comes to step advance, and that is one of fairness. And the issue is, here's a brand-new employee, you know, not so much dealing with this position, but a brand-new employee who comes in and we grant, because it's a difficult recruitment, we grant a step advance, sometimes even to step 5. Well, there's 5 other employees who are still at step 3, step 2, step 4. They're qualified too. And now they're going to be, this person is leapfrogging over them. And there's a perception of unfairness. So to some extent, I at least, when I'm looking at these, try to keep that in mind.
And, you know, just as a follow-on to this, that's a real dynamic that was just described. I think that is the sort of negotiable thing that sits with the union to address. We don't address that. You know, we can address only what we can address, you know, and the fairness thing is a real thing. It's a real dynamic and it's a real problem. It's not something we can fix. It's something the contract needs to address, you know, if both parties can come to closure.
And one example of this also is Local 21 did, so we won't bring any Local 21 positions forward for step advance placement because they actually negotiated in their contract that, well, it used to be the case that they negotiated that a new employee could bring in like pay stubs from their last job and then we would match it. But now they have, provisions so that if the district approves, then they can start at a step advance without having to go through the Personnel Commission.
Okay, so we have a request to start at step 2. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. He may be in the room. He
Okay, we
mentioned
should-
he may be here. Maurice, not in the Zoom room, sorry. But I'm not sure if he might have left.
Well, I see that,
Yes, I am here.
oh, okay.
Now God is.
Sorry, didn't mean to pass you over. Not entirely sure where you are, but be that as it may. I see Denise Diggs-Ray also has her hand up, but Mr. Borden, please go ahead and address the commission.
First off, I'd like to thank you for taking this under consideration. I did in fact make the request to start at a higher level, of one of which my previous jobs are at or above that level. And I feel that with my experience that I bring to the district, that would be a fair starting point for my career here with Berkeley Unified.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Diggs-Ray, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I did. I just need clarification because I thought that there was a BCCE member that had requested a step increase. And at the time, the club director said, well, because you had been reclassed, which gave you a step increase, then you were entitled to another. Is that not correct?
I'm afraid you were breaking up. I think I have a general idea of what you were asking. My understanding, and Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, is that step advances for BCCE employees and others were brought before the commission during it has to be done within the first 6 months of their hire date. But if it's a difficult to recruit position and the individual has the qualifications to merit a step increase, that was brought to the commission and was approved on a number of occasions. Is that right, Aaron?
That's what I recall as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I think we're ready for a motion if someone would like to make one.
I'll go ahead and motion that we approve our interim executive director's recommendation for placement at step 2. We have an awful lot of projects going on here at BUSD, and we need all the talent we can get. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Borden, and I hope you all agree.
Yeah, second.
And I agree too, and I also agree with thanking you, Mr. Borden, for joining BUSD and putting your considerable experience to use with us. We appreciate it very much. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Next request is item 9C, which is a step advance request for B. Ware, an accounting technician, and that's pages 40 through 46. And Aaron, could you present this to us?
Sure. So this is Ms. Bria Ware, and she brings relevant experience in technical accounting duties, including account reconciliation, auditing, managing accounts payable, accounts receivable, and even payroll and purchasing processes. Her background is mostly in restaurant and catering business management, but many of her responsibilities, such as managing contracts and processing invoices, align closely with the requirements of this role. And then the position itself has actually faced significant turnover. We've had 3 incumbents in this position since 2021. So that points to like ongoing challenges in the retention piece. Most recently, this recruitment resulted in several candidates actually either declining the role or resigning during probation. And then the recent class and comp study recommended a reclassification for this position, noting that its duties differ significantly from the other 2 accounting tech employees in business services. This specific role in special ed involves unique responsibilities, which make the recruitment more challenging and harder to retain qualified candidates. So given Ms. Ware's qualifications and her transferable skills, I recommend placement at step 3.
Okay, thank you. I see that Bria Ware is present on Zoom. Would you like to make any comments, Bria Ware?
I would just like to thank the Personnel Commission for considering this step advance request.
Okay, thank you so much. Comments? Yes, Mr. Albert.
Just a question, is there a science to which of the steps, so I saw the request was for step 5, the recommendation is for step 3. Previous one was both a request for and a recommendation at step 1, or step 2. Is there a science to how far up the ladder we would go?
So based on that rubric that we submitted, we count every year of experience. We count 1 year of, like if they have a college degree, we'll count that towards 1 step. And then for every relevant year of work experience, we'll count that for an additional step. So in this case, it was a bit more challenging because she wasn't in that specific or very similar role. But I looked at all the duties that she performed in her role, and I talked to her as well and looked at all those. A lot of the duties were very similar, although not the same.
Thank you.
I would also add that a lot of institutions will only give credit when you have done the role in a similar position. Something that I think helps us in terms of recruitment and retention is what Erin just described. So there's some art and there's some science, because if you were in the restaurant business and you did accounting, there is some stuff there. Is it a one-to-one? Probably not, but, there's credit for that. And at that point, what we defer to is HR expertise, in making that assessment. And Erin did the right thing, which is she interviewed the employee to get a better idea, not make assumptions, so she had an idea about how to do the placement.
Thank you.
Ms. Scher, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Right, I just want to, thank you, I appreciate it. I just want to say that I do appreciate the fact that Erin did speak to the employee, but I do also want to add, because I've had the opportunity to work with this employee, and I've heard from other employees within the district how grateful they are to have her working in this department and how good she is in that field, because it is extremely hard to keep someone as an account technician in the sped department. It truly is a hard position to fill. And if it wasn't, I'd be against it because I am not one for the whole step advance. I'm really not. But in this particular position, it's extremely hard to maintain someone. So I would be more inclined for us to consider the step 5 because she's good in the position. And she does know the job, and she knows it well. And working and listening to other employees within the district that has to work with her, they're very grateful for her. And I've heard that from many people. So she knows what she's doing. And if we're looking at her credentials and what she does, I think she deserves a step 5 instead of a step 3.
Thank you, Ms. Scher. Comments from the commissioners?
May I ask when she hired on?
Actually just reached out to Sarah about that right now.
Granted her 6 months right now.
Yeah,
Like today, okay, all right.
Not today, but
she's about to complete her probation.
Okay. So one of the things we know is she hasn't been through a full year cycle of finance. which inclines me to rely on the analysis that Aaron did, based on transferable skills. And, I'm glad to hear it's been smooth sailing and great going forward, and, continue to hope that that'll be the case.
I have to agree with that, too. I'd like to defer to our interim executive director and her analysis. The rubrics, it's meant to be somewhat general, but it says 1 step for every year of directly related experience. Generally, that means school district experience, but not exclusively that. So I agree with you, Commissioner Goldstein. Okay, do I have a motion?
I'm giving Sola the opportunity, he's being shy. Okay, I'll go ahead and recommend that we approve the executive director's recommendation for placement at step 3.
I'll second that.
And I'll agree.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ware, very much. Okay, now we are on to the Personnel Commission Annual Report, which is on pages 47 and 48. There's something that jumped out to me. It's been alluded to already, but it's on that first page where there's the chart that compares 22, 23, and 24 fiscal year ending, and the applications received for 24 show 2,264 compared to 1,581 in the prior year and 1,367 in the year before that. And frankly, we thought those were good years. So the fact that you have created a recruitment environment in which we achieved 2,264 applications. Now, granted, not all applications move forward throughout the entire process, but it shows from an initial standpoint that the recruitments have been, in general, quite successful.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think we're just posting in a lot more places, and we're trying to get a little more targeted about where we post.
Yes, and just one sec, our thanks definitely go out to Brian and to Olga and to Sarah and of course to Aaron for accomplishing that. It's not an easy task. Yes, Mr. Alpert.
Yeah, and I don't know that we are responsible for it, but I'm just also noticing the separations from service has gone down significantly, which seems like a good criteria as well. So I wanted to point that out.
For sure. I'll add that it's been a very deliberate goal, I think, of this department to diversify its recruitments. We are recruiting, it's not that we are getting, just bigger pool. We're getting a more diverse pool. And that was the goal that was articulated a few years ago. So I think we're starting to see the results of that.
Right. Okay, I don't think is it too late to do an edit to my profile?
No, it's not too late.
The only edit is that on my profile, it says in the present tense, and when it was written, it was correct, but it says he volunteers in a 7th grade humanities class at King Middle School where he helps with distance learning. I did do that for about a year and a half at King Middle School during the pandemic. I'm not volunteering to do that. I don't even think they do distance learning anymore. So could that be, Sarah, put in the past tense? Thank you.
Similarly, I have a edit or two, with the same circumstance. So where it says, after it talks about being a member of the development group in the years, you should also say, and was a member of the BUSD Sexual Harassment Advisory Committee, and those dates are 2014 through 2021. I had a question about just a couple other things that, I'm not sure where it's appropriate to put this, so I'm open to suggestions. We're talking about the year, the fiscal year 2024, so July 1st, 23 to June 2024. And it's true that Tim Carter, was the commissioner then. Because, it talks about his term expiring in 2026, and, we've had a change out. I'm not sure where the right place is to somehow note this in this report, that, that has changed. So I wonder what the rest of you think about that. And then I think the only other things that I would ask about, the narrative is really nice here that Erin put together. I think at the second to last paragraph or third to last paragraph, we welcome Soli Alpert, appointed union commissioner to the commission. We should add the effective date, for when that happened. And I don't know if that date is today or the date you were sworn in, or, what date we should be using,
Today.
swear-in date, right?
I think when we swore him in, we
Yeah,
said it would
okay.
start today.
All right. And then in the second last paragraph, where you give a thanks to Brian, Olga, and Sarah, I think you just ought to include their last names.
I'm sorry, include,
Their last names.
oh. Right. Good suggestions?
Oh, the one last one, also effective date, where we talk about Charlie Castillo moving on to a new date, or a new role in public service. Maybe that effective date also.
Okay. Sarah, did you catch all those edits? Okay, good. All right, well, I guess we technically need a motion to approve the 2023-2024 annual report with the edits that were described.
So moved.
And we'll see this again, right? You present a second time in December?
We didn't do the first reading last month, and
that's
we're
kind of
supposed to
what we're
approve
supposed
it in November,
okay.
so.
Got it, okay.
And we have to forward it now to the board as well.
Got
So
it,
we're
okay.
hoping to get the final approval today.
Okay.
Yes, Sarah.
Was there a question about the order of the commissioners?
There was sort of a question about, did we want to put under Carter's profile some sort of note, that simply noted, that,
He's leaving.
Chairman Carter resigned, effective 11/21, and a new commissioner, Soli Alpert,
I hear you, I just wondered because as you mentioned at the beginning that it's for the school year.
Right, it's like the part we're addressing here is the term expires in 2026. The reason I look at that is anybody reading this would think, okay, these are the people, and one of the people's changed.
Can add that.
How do we feel about just some sort of, notation, literally that just says, note, Timothy Carter resigned effective whatever, Soli Alpert was appointed effective whatever? Okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
okay.
I mean, Mr. Alpert is referred to later.
He is,
Yeah.
but I
But I
worry
agree.
sometimes people may not get that far.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
He's on our website now, too.
Oh, exciting.
Okay, so let's see.
I moved.
It's been moved and seconded, I think.
I second.
Okay, as modified, and Sarah's got the modifications, and I agree with that, so that passes unanimously as well. So now we are on to our closed session. It says 30-minute limit. My guess is it's not going to take that long, but we should go into closed session, and this is to discuss the recruitment for the Executive Director of Classified Personnel. Okay, so we are back from our closed session. It is, what time is it now? 3:57, I've been told. Yes, 3:57. And the report from closed session is that the commissioners discussed the recruitment for the executive director of classified personnel and discussed next steps. And so we will go over some of those next steps in a minute, but there's a second period for public comments. So if anyone would like to make a public comment again, this would be the time to do it. Sarah, do you see any virtual hands raised? Okay, no one has their hand raised. Denise. Okay, Denise, please go ahead and make your public comment.
I would like to, I emailed Erin because I wasn't sure if she could give me this information or it had to go to the PC, but I wanted to know the difference in training and experience versus performance. And then the other comment that I would like to make is I know that the PC has been updating merit rules for a while now, and I'm just wondering when union and others may be able to see what you have. I know it may take 5 more years, but just to see what you have done and how it differs would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, I can, I'll briefly address that last comment about the merit rules, which is that we have made, we had quite a few special meetings, on the subject. And then we determined it would be most efficient to make some revisions, quite a few revisions, to the merit rules in what I would call red line version, sort of a strikeout version. And that is pretty, it's in my hands, and it's about 95% complete. Sarah has been very kind to provide a lot of technical support on how to accomplish that. So as soon, we sort of had a major hiatus during the comp and classification study, but now it's back on the radar, and I believe that we can be scheduling some meetings at the beginning of 2025, special meetings to go over those revisions. And yes, those revisions will be absolutely made public in a red line format. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. So our next meeting will be, we have a special call meeting on December 12th at 9:30 a.m., primarily in closed session, where the commissioners will be interviewing the applicants who are on the eligibility list for executive director. And then on December 18th, from 1 to 4, we will have our regular meeting at that time. So if there's nothing else to come before the commission, we'll stand adjourned.
Well done, 4:01 p.m.